Hi, and welcome to the Gen X Rewind podcast. I'm Evan.
And I'm Brady.
Hey, Brady, good to see you again. Any sporting events happen over the last
Yeah.
week that you were interested in? It's like we had that discussion last week, but welcome everybody for informational purposes. Gen X are people like us who were born between the years of 1965 and 1980. And by the way, I just heard there's a new generation. Gen Alpha is now no more. Everyone born as of January 1st of this year, 2025, since we're starting in a quartile of this century, is now Gen Beta.
Hmm.
And what's is interesting about that is that pretty much describes a lot of males in the world right
Yeah.
now is Gen Beta. So it's like, anyway, we're just two regular Gen X guys, and we talk about recent events. We do some segments, but it's basically just our opinions of whatever, right? Like we talk about whatever, we bob and weave about topics and things that might be of interest to you, or they may not, right? Sometimes they're not. Maybe you don't care. That's all right. We're Gen X. We don't care, right? Like it's that stuff just rolls off our back. We don't really care about that. It's mostly just an organic conversation between two guys, and it's mostly PG, so you can listen to it in the car with your kids, and they might say, "Daddy, what is that man talking about? What's a skateboard? What's an Atari?" Right? Those may be things that come up. What a great conversational tool to use with your children to explain your childhood to them, right? This show, like, it's a great thing, right?
Yeah.
So, hey, college football playoffs, we're down to the final.
Yeah.
And I kind of laugh about it because it's the number seven seed versus the eight seed. So, way to go, selection committee. You nailed it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty pathetic.
And it's interesting because it's like, of course, Notre Dame has a wide, broad following because of their Catholic origin, and lots of folks are Notre Dame fans. But they're kind of a polarizing team, I would say, right? Like my dad hated Notre Dame when I was a kid. Like we were watching Notre Dame, he hated them. Here's why: not because they're Catholic, and not because they're from South Bend, Indiana, the armpit of America. It was because uh, they're overrated. That was what he told me, right? He's like, they're always overrated. So we're going
Yeah.
to find out, right? We're going to find out if they're overrated this year or not as they go up against Ohio State, who lost to Michigan.
Right.
So,
Right.
uh,
Don't do that.
yeah, right. It's like maybe Michigan was better than we thought. Now, are you and everybody else from Michigan, if Ohio State happens to win on Monday night, are you going to claim that you're actually the national champions because you beat them,
That's
right?
yeah. You just took the rest of the season off. That's all.
That's right. You won the game that mattered, and you are the de facto national champions. The same could be said if Notre Dame wins about Northern Illinois. They are the national champions. If can you imagine the people in Northern Illinois how much they want Notre Dame to win right now,
Oh yeah.
so that they can claim that they beat the national champions, right?
That,
Like,
yeah. They'll be using that for years.
yeah, they'll never forget that. Like,
Right.
this will be the greatest moment in Northern Illinois. Are they the Salukis, right? They're the Salukis
Boy, you got me. I don't know
or
what
the Spider Rabbits or the, no, I don't know. I think they're the Salukis.
are they?
Somebody, please, if you're following the show, inform us, ignorant people, if it is Northern Illinois Salukis. Somebody is named the Salukis, and as I remember, that's a dog. It's like a cross between a greyhound and an Afghan or something. It's kind of
Okay.
like that. That's
That's an
my understanding.
interesting mascot choice.
That's right. There's a few out there, right? Here's the funny thing, though. So you've got the Buckeyes, right? Which makes sense. It's, that's related to Ohio, apparently, somehow. And they have the little stickers on their helmet, right?
Yeah.
Little Buckeyes. So Notre Dame are the Fighting Irish. Now, let's relate that to the Washington, previously known as the Redskins. right? Which we had to get rid of because it was so bad. Fighting Irish? Like,
Yeah.
aren't all Irish people just
Yeah.
up in arms
Yeah.
about that nickname?
Yeah. I mean, what are they gonna make it worse by giving them a bottle of whiskey? Oh,
Yeah, exactly, right? It's like who are they fighting? Their wives, right?
yeah.
Like it's like the fighting Irish. But somehow Irish people and Catholics love that,
Yeah.
right?
You're not offended or hurt or
No, not
yeah.
at all. And as a Viking fan and as someone who is part Swedish, I am also not offended by the raiding and marauding and raping Vikings being the mascot of my favorite team from Minnesota, which is loaded with Norwegians and Swedes. So
Yeah.
again, it's an honor to be called a Viking, right? Maybe not if your name is Sam Darnold at the moment. Uh, I'm
Well,
pretty sure with the way he played the last two games, he just cost himself about $50 million.
I was gonna say that was a huge setback because if he throws 300 yards and he throws three touchdowns, no picks, he is being signed and
Yeah,
paid. Even if they,
somebody's paying him, even if it's not the
they
Vikings, somebody's paying him.
yeah, even if they lost by two touchdowns, if he throws well and does well, he's golden. And yeah, like you said, it could be like 40, $50 million now.
Yeah.
Um,
Instead, he took 9 sacks and his average time to delivery was like 18 seconds. Or
yeah,
so it seemed. It was like the announcers in Minnesota on one of the plays where he was just standing there like a deer in the headlights and not throwing the ball said, throw the ball.
yeah,
It's like, I mean, just anywhere, like out of bounds, something. Don't take a 15-yard sack
yeah,
9 times. He lost 85 yards in
yeah.
sacks
Yeah,
in that game.
I was going to ask you about, and I talked with some people at work that watched the game. Two things. I mean, one, yeah, he's holding on to the ball way too long, time after time. But as the offensive coordinator, aren't you designing quick throws? The second half, you've been sacked so many times. They're getting through the line. Okay, abandon that whole 10-step drop. Uh,
Yeah.
and let's get 5 yard outs. Let's get screens. I didn't see him doing any of that.
I mean,
I-
they tried it a couple times and he airmailed them, right? He was missing receivers by 5 yards. So it's like the offensive coordinators just throws up his hands. What do I have to do? And if you go back, somebody on X said if you go back and look at that Packer game where he played tremendously, he had some incredible throws. He stepped up in the pocket and he was throwing to Jefferson on the run. And what happened to that? Like
yeah,
what I think happened to that is the big stage came in the Detroit game and in the playoff game, and he's not up to it,
yeah,
right? And he became very average. He's not a terrible quarterback. He became very average when the moment was there. And there's quarterbacks like that. And then there's other quarterbacks, Mahomes and some others who, in the big moment, they absolutely step up and shine,
yeah,
right? And so it's interesting now with the quarterbacks that are left in the NFL playoffs, I mean, Lamar Jackson played lights out in his first playoff game, but he has a history of crumbling in the second game,
yeah,
right? So we'll see. I mean, Jaden Daniels, that guy is what a great rookie, right? Like, holy cow. That's his 12th win or 13th win as a rookie. He played in a playoff game. He played really well. He still seems so fragile to me. He did when he was at Arizona State and I was watching him. I'm like, that guy's going to get broken in half. And
yeah.
yet somehow he's made out of rubber because it doesn't seem to really affect him most of the time.
Right. Yeah. I just thought with Minnesota, I thought, when I'm watching that game, I'm gonna have package A and package B. And package B, roll them out, get Sam Darnold rolling
Yeah.
out, get Jefferson, doing some outs and get away from that defensive line. And because man, I just was surprised that they didn't set him up to create first downs and that. It was like, okay, well, we're just gonna, we're just gonna throw it deep, throw it deep, throw it deep. It was
Yeah, the Vikings don't seem to make halftime adjustments, and that's one of my objections with the coaching staff, right? They just keep doing whatever the game plan was.
yeah,
And it wasn't working against Detroit, and they just stuck with it, and it didn't work the whole game. And they did the same thing in the playoff game.
yeah,
And the Rams aren't a great team, right? They're not. They're not a great team. They were very, as my son would say, mid
yeah,
during the season for the most part. I don't really see them going to the next level. The Eagles are an interesting team. They don't seem as good as they were a couple of years ago, though. I mean, Detroit is definitely the cream of the crop, but I'm telling you, look out for the Redskins. Jaden Daniels can play. That could be interesting. I think Kansas City loses playoff game no matter how much the refs attempt to help them. Now, speaking of refs, because I brought it up, now let me tell you something. That play in the Vikings game where the Rams quarterback fumbled the ball and it was picked up and returned for a fumble six. That's the worst call I've ever seen in an NFL game. That was clearly a fumble. And even at the absolute worst, it was intentional grounding.
yeah,
That was ridiculous. That is New York called in and say, we got to have the Rams win because the city's burning to the ground and it's the largest market in the country. I don't know. And X was full of posts about it. Like, same thing. Everyone had the same opinion. That's clearly a fumble. There's no way that that rule can stand or whatever they saw there. It was ridiculous. I've never seen anything like it. And I'm trying not to be a homer about it. If I saw anybody else have that kind of a play, it was still ridiculous. That's a fumble. That's intentional grounding at
yeah.
the absolute worst, right?
Yeah. His head is down at the ground. I
He's
mean, he's
not looking.
straight down at the ground. He's not throwing the ball, and he's obviously just trying to avoid the sack by, and so he just. So I think at the most, you got to say at least it's intentional grounding. That's not a. You're not throwing it. You're just trying to,
And
you know.
whatever happened to the in the grasp call? Remember 20 years ago? Oh, he's in the grasp. What about that? I mean, there's so many things where that is not a good call. And then Aikman is like, oh, yeah, he was trying to get rid of it. He had a receiver in the area. And I'm like, dude, what are you talking
Yeah,
about? Right? I know you're a homer for quarterbacks, but come on.
yeah,
Like, so somebody was whispering in his ear, right? Like, we got to legitimize this ridiculous call, so you better support it. You
yeah.
can't tell me otherwise. It's just too weird, right? It's just, oh my goodness.
It was terrible.
I've
Yeah,
seen enough bad calls. I don't even call them bad calls. They're fixed calls. It's like there's an agenda and the calls go with whatever the agenda is most
yeah.
of the time.
Did you see that Notre Dame? There was a bad call, and the Notre Dame fans were throwing things out on the field, and it was so loud you could hear the booing. And it was a really bad
Yeah.
call.
It's both college and pros this year. It's either bad calls or it's a guy named Vinny in Las Vegas is calling the refs directly and
Yeah,
saying, hey, the money line is, Notre Dame's got to win the game or somebody's got, whoever's got to, we got to have the Rams win this game. And then people who say, oh, come on, that doesn't happen. It's like, it's happened multiple times in different sports. So don't say that it doesn't happen. In fact, ASU was involved in a point shaving scam. And so that happened. There was a referee in the NBA who was essentially fixing games in the NBA, and it hurt the Phoenix Suns back in 90, no, back in 2007, right? And he admitted to it.
yeah,
It happens, people, right? It really does. Speaking of things that are suspicious, the California wildfires, we brought it up. It was just starting last week on the podcast. And the more we see, there have been guys caught with blowtorches or whatever going around lighting fires.
yeah,
Like, this isn't global warming, people. This is arson.
Yeah.
and most of it intentional. Now, what's behind it, right? Is it eco-terrorism? Is it, hey, we want a 15-minute city, so let's just burn this whole thing down? Is it environmentalist? I don't know. I don't know. And we may never find out. I don't know. Come Monday, though, there's a new sheriff in town, and maybe the narrative changes, right?
Well, it's California, so you never
I
say.
mean, it's California. Anything is if anything's possible, it's possible in California, right? It's tragic. And here, someone was talking to me earlier this week and said, "Look, I have a hard time feeling a lot of pity for millionaire Hollywood people who lost one of their 8 homes, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's hard to feel sorry for them. The people to feel sorry for is, and here's the case for this, where it really hurts. Your mom and dad bought their house in Pacific Palisades in 1965 for $100,000. It's a beautiful home. They've kept it all these years. They're living in it. They're in their 80s now. The house is worth $4 million dollars and it burned to the ground. They have nothing,
Right.
right? They
Yeah.
were going to pass that house down as an asset to their children and they've got nothing. And they lost their State Farm insurance
Hmm.
because State Farm canceled and Allstate canceled a lot of insurance policies. They have nothing. Their whole lives, beautiful house, Pacific Palisades, California, and now they've got nothing. That just absolutely tugs at your heartstrings, right?
Well, and you think of, I read one article that said it showed what, two or three boys, and it said that they went for a hike and
Oh, I saw that.
they were meditating and started a fire. And I thought, oh, come on. I'm sure they were lighting up,
Yeah.
some lettuce.
Smoking a doobie in the weeds
Well,
and
and because everything's so dry and nothing's
oh
cared for
my gosh.
grass, it just is like, straw just blows up.
With 100-mile-an-hour winds to spread it, right? When no water in the reservoirs or in the fire hydrants, right?
Yeah.
Like just mismanagement like you would not believe.
Yeah.
It's sad. It's sad. California probably is arguably the most beautiful state or was the most beautiful state in the country. Beaches, mountains,
Oh,
farmland,
yeah.
everything, sequoias and redwoods, everything, and
Yeah.
it's just been run into the ground by poor management.
Yeah.
State government is just the worst.
That
It's
that's
sad.
that's absolutely that's what I jotted down as my get off my lawn.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. Yeah.
Stay tuned.
One other major event, I alluded to it earlier, coming up on Monday is the presidential inauguration, which is, wow, things are going to change. I don't know. I mean, Carter to Reagan is probably in my lifetime the biggest like 180, right? And I was just watching a documentary this week on the hostages in Iran and how Carter fumbled that whole thing and didn't do it. And just the change from the Carter administration to the Reagan administration, pulling us out of all of that milieu from Carter. This might be as big. This is even probably bigger than Obama to Trump. Biden to Trump might be the biggest 180 we may have ever seen in a presidential election, right?
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of pressure. I mean, can you imagine the pressure that he's under? Because everyone's expectations are he's going to fix this entire
Yeah, you
mess.
got to get stuff done, right?
Yeah, yeah. And you got 4 years to do it. You don't have, excuses or 8 years. You've got to get it done, right now.
And I
So,
caught a couple of the clips of, he's trying to get uh his nominees in and some of the questions that they're asked are just ridiculous. Have you ever sexually abused someone or whatnot? You know what the proper answer to a question like that is? No. Have you?
yeah,
Right? Like what that's baseless.
yeah,
What are you basing that on? Hey, Brady, have you stopped beating your wife? No. Really? You're still beating her? It's like one of those questions. It's like, what is this, sixth grade? It's
yeah.
like,
Oh, it's
And
pathetic.
one of the nominees was asked like a bunch of random questions by one of the Republican senators just to show how stupid it is. Hey, I can ask random questions too, right?
Yeah,
Like, what's the ammunition used in a something something rifle or whatever, It's like these are just random questions to try to make someone look guilty of something that there's no basis for it. It's ridiculous. And honestly, both sides tend to do it. It's kind of shameless for the most part. It's like when you win elections, you have the right to pick your people. That's it, period.
right.
Right? The
Yeah,
American people put up with some very underachieving people over the last 4 years. Transportation dude, Pete, whatever his name is, butt plug. I don't know, whatever. Booty. It's like this guy was like on vacation every time there was a disaster. It's like,
oh
what is going on, right? But hey, you win elections, you get to pick your people. It's like that's how it works.
yeah, yeah,
This formality is just kind of stupid. Also, the other thing that bothers me is like there's way too much time. We talked about it previously, way too much time between the actual election and when a president is sworn in.
right,
It's too long. That
right.
needs to be cut to like 3 weeks max, I think. It's like December 1st, president comes in. I don't it's just too much time.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I don't know if you saw, I think it was today, it might have been yesterday, there was a vote and it was they passed it. It was who, let's see, let me try to word this right. It had to do with if an illegal immigrant commits a violent crime, they're to be deported. Okay.
Yeah.
Passed. It
People
was
voted against that.
exactly. It was all Democrats that voted against that. And
Who votes against that?
what is the rationale behind saying no? If there's someone here who's illegally here and they're committing violent crimes, let's let them stay. Eh,
Unbelievable.
yeah,
No rational person can make an argument why that should happen.
no,
I mean, just plain and simple. No rational person can defend that. It's
no.
ridiculous.
And it just shows you that they're still playing politics, even though they had their hat handed to them. They're
Yeah.
still marching along that same party line, despite what the obvious, rationale is in that
And
situation.
yeah, and it's like we'll give you some advice, right? That's
Yeah,
why you lost. That's why
right.
you lost.
Yeah,
Because most people think that's stupid,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like wake up and smell the toast. That is the reason you lost. Things just like that.
right.
Right?
And you
You
know
got
what?
you gotta normal people have to take back that party, right? You can't
Yeah,
continue down that line or it won't exist 5 years from now, right?
and it's easy to march down that line until you and your family are affected
Yeah,
by,
exactly. Until an illegal alien kills a family member, and then all of a sudden it becomes pretty personal. And I happen to know somebody whose family member was essentially killed by an illegal alien, and it's you you've got no ground to stand on,
yeah,
right? There's just no way that should any crime should be an automatic deportation. You're
yeah.
already breaking the law. You're already here illegally. It's ridiculous, right? It just is.
If your function is to make the population safer, as a government official,
You're
and
sworn to that.
you're to protect us, and you're voting against deporting, violent criminals, I think
Wow.
that's well, they should really look into that and expose it. Make sure people are aware that hey, the people
Absolutely.
this is what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, so we have our three questions segment, and I've got some good ones. This is our segment where we ask each other three questions, usually about our childhood or something from our Gen X days. We haven't seen each other's questions, so it's totally off the cuff. But I've got three questions for Brady. All right. So, did you walk to school or ride the bus as a kid? And how far was it to school? And was it uphill both ways in 2 feet of snow?
Right, in the blowing snow. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I walked to school. I middle school, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade for me, it was about mile and a half to 2 miles away.
Wow.
And we walked in the winter, didn't matter how cold it was. And yeah, there was instances where it was so cold that your nose hairs freeze when you're
Yeah.
and your basically your hair just from being out of the shower and drying as best you can,
Yeah.
it's still it
It's crunchy.
yeah,
Yeah.
it gets crunchy. And the big thing with us is earmuffs were dorky. They just
Yeah.
fit
So, yeah.
dorky. But there were those winter days where you're weighing,
Yeah.
oh man, I'm gonna look like a nerd, but my ears are gonna break off if
Yeah.
I'm gonna walk with those on. But yeah, I used to walk there, and the what was it, sixth and seventh grade? That's where I was introduced to bullies. Uh,
Ah,
because walking home, there was a group of very bad eighth graders that just decided to chase me home, a mile and a half sprint. So
nice.
every day after school, I was trying to get out as fast as I could. And what happened was I noticed there was another group of eighth graders walking my same direction who were bigger, stronger. They were African American, and I befriended them and walked with them.
Ah, then you had no more problems.
Problems just magically went away. They
Isn't
decided,
that something?
yeah, they weren't going to
What
chase
is
me.
it about what is it about that age, right? Like sixth through eighth grade. Like I didn't deal with bullies much at all prior to that, but there was bullies. They started to make themselves apparent in about sixth grade.
Yeah,
And then it carried through. It was junior high for me. It was seventh, eighth, and ninth grade, and there were some bullies in junior high, and just s- stupid people.
yeah,
It's weird, and it's funny because schools have done, I think, a better job, at least where we live. I live in a planned community, so it's a little bit, family friendly and all of that. And my son, who's now a junior, but he hasn't said that there's bullies. I asked him about his elementary school, and he's like, no, that doesn't really happen. He hasn't really seen it, right? Now in high school, I don't know. Maybe he just doesn't say. Uh, he jokes about it. He's like, if I wore that, I'd get beat up, right? Like, if you apparently now for kids, if you wear a jacket, like not earmuffs, if you just wear a jacket, people make fun of you, you know. And of course, it's Arizona. But it's still like 42 degrees in the morning when they go to school. But kids are in shorts and t-shirts because they won't look cool if they wear a jacket. And we
yeah.
don't have, for people who live in the Midwest, you don't understand. There is no place here in Arizona to hang your coat, right? Restaurants don't have coat hangers. Schools no longer have lockers, and there
Right.
are no coat hangers. So if you wear a coat to school, you have to wear it all day long or somehow shove it into your backpack. It's kind of
Yeah.
ridiculous,
Yeah.
really, right?
Yeah. No, that's definitely my experience is yeah, I walked to school, walked back, and then yeah, that whole bully situation, it was how that whole thing resolved was uh I was I don't know if you guys had senior kill day. They called it senior
Yeah,
kill,
yeah, there was. Yeah.
and they basically run out and just beat the crap out of, a little underclassmen or whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember my teacher, I was getting ready and I was like looking at the clock and like getting ready to run out the door. And he asked me, well, what's going on? And I just told him, well, there's this group of guys that are, they're always chasing me and they're they're trying to beat me up or catch me or whatever. And so he goes, "Oh, really? That's interesting." So he said, "I'll let you go. You can go early. You go ahead. You can go early." So the next day, it was the worst possible thing because he said, "Okay, we're going to walk from class to class, and I want you to point out
Oh
each
boy.
one of those guys who is chasing you." So yeah, sure enough, I went and oh, there's one there. Oh, there's one there. And I was like, he's
Yeah,
gonna
that one.
he's there he is, that's him. And yeah, but I mean they pulled him down in the office and whatever the discipline assistant principal uh,
Yeah.
said to him did the trick because that was the end of that. But
That's and it's really interesting because I think most kids back then were kind of afraid to speak up too, because it's like this will just make it worse, right?
oh, uh, yeah,
Right.
I was
Now,
stuck.
for those of you out there, like Brady's not like 5 foot 2 inches tall and 98 pounds. He's like 6'3" and 108 pounds. He's not a little guy, right? And say, it's like it's it's a common experience. I think almost everybody in the Gen X world, because it was kind of people turned a blind eye to bullying when we
Yeah,
were kids a lot.
yeah,
And it was like, oh, it's just boys being boys. And it's like, no, it's not. It's mean. It's cruel, right? It's like something needs to be done about it. So I am happy that, schools and things take it much more seriously now.
right.
And now the bigger problem seems to be cyberbullying, right? Like, calling a girl fat on her Instagram thing is like, this is how people bully
Yeah,
in today's world, right? Like, the saying was when we were kids, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And it's like, yeah, right. So words don't hurt us, but there's kids out there with sticks and stones, right? It's like that doesn't solve the problem,
right.
right?
Broken bone.
Uh,
Yeah, I think, I don't know what your situation was or what your experience, but most of those guys they were pretty messed up, broken
yeah,
family,
yeah, and
they were hurting from probably their home life.
domestic abuse, probably,
Yeah,
right?
way for them to kind of probably decompress some of that
Yeah.
pain, maybe. Who knows?
Now I'll tell you a story, and this is a personal, painful story, but yeah, in junior high, there was a couple of kids who were kind of a bully to me, and one of the ways that kids sometimes respond to that is then turn on another kid and bully them,
Uh,
right?
yeah,
It's a way of like having some control over stuff, right? I don't know what it is. And I fell into that trap for a short period of time with a kid in junior high. And then I later connected with him on Facebook and I was scared to death to do it. And the first thing I said when we connected on Facebook was, I'm sorry. I was being bullied and I took it out on you. And I apologize. And I never treated anyone that way ever again in my life because I felt guilty about it. And the amazing thing is, this is 40 years ago. And he's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. I understand. I forgive you. It's no big deal." That was one of the kindest things. Honestly, that's one of the kindest things anyone has ever done to me in my entire life was
yeah,
forgive me for that. It was just that was a great experience. If you've ever mistreated someone in your life, ask for forgiveness. If someone comes to you and uh, you weren't kind to them, seek their forgiveness. If it's the flip side, forgive other people for things that they did. You don't know their backstory. And I told my son that I'm like, if someone does bully you at school or whatever, it's probably because they have a miserable home life,
yeah,
right? And they're being bullied by their parents or somebody else and they're taking it out on you. It has nothing to do with you. It's not a it's not a statement on you, it's a statement on them. And you know, they probably need help in some fashion or another. it's difficult because I don't think kids usually go to their parents about that because they're embarrassed about it.
Right.
And they
Yeah,
often don't go to the principal or teachers or whatnot either. There's a lot of shame involved in it.
right.
But there doesn't need to be. So if you're a kid out there and you're listening, you don't need to be ashamed of it. It's not a statement on you. Share it with your parents. They'll be understanding
Yeah.
and share it with your teacher or principal or whomever. They will handle it. They take it seriously nowadays. You don't have to live with it. You don't have to just ignore it, right?
Yeah, that's
Hey,
true.
who was your favorite athlete? Question number two, who's your favorite athlete as a kid?
Oh my goodness. Boy, that's a tough one. Yeah, well, let's see. If we go way back, oh man, was there a sport in mind?
Nope, anybody.
Anybody?
Like I
Boy.
have a guess of what you're going to say, but I want to hear it first, and then I'll tell you if I was right or not.
Yeah. Gosh, there were so many because we were watching all the different sports. Well, goodness sakes. Um, oh man, that is really tough. And in basketball, of course, we enjoyed Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars, and I liked Mark Aguirre. I thought he was fun. Yeah, football, of course, Barry Sanders
Barry
was.
Sanders. That's what I was going to guess you would say. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the only one that made the games worth watching most years. Um, yeah, I mean, tennis. Uh, Pete Sampras was fun to watch, but I think that might have been later. I don't remember exactly when he came on.
90s, I think.
Oh, yeah. You know what? Honestly, and that's what something I was going to talk to you about. Boxing, the middleweights, when we were kids or younger growing up, the middleweights were amazing. You had
Yes.
Sugar Ray Leonard and Gary
Sugar Ray.
Mann, and you had Thomas the Hitman Hearns, and you had
Hearns. Yeah.
Marvelous Marvin Hagler. And it was almost like big time wrestling. You had no idea who was going to win when these
No.
superstars would face off. And that was really a
It was
fun.
great. And I don't know where that went,
Yeah,
right? Like there's nothing been like that group of boxers from that era. And I was telling my son about it when we watched the Tyson and Paul fight and then we watched those two gals fight before and that was an awesome fight. I can honestly say I've never watched the entirety of a female boxing match, and it was way entertaining. And I
yeah,
said, you gotta look up on YouTube like Hearns Hagler
yeah,
or Sugar Ray and Hearns or Sugar Ray and Hagler. They throw like 300 punches around. I mean, those guys were just going at it
yeah,
nonstop. They were so exciting. Sometimes the heavyweight guys, it's a little bit of a chess game, right? They kind of rope a dope with Muhammad Ali and
yeah,
stuff, and they don't throw as many punches and they're not as active. But yeah, those guys from that era, that was remarkably entertaining. And if you've never experienced that, just go to YouTube. I guarantee those fights are there. Those are tremendous fights between those guys. Uh, just look up any Sugar Ray fight, Hagler Hearns. It's some of those are some of the best fights ever, right?
yeah. Oh yeah, those are fun days. Fun
Now
night.
here's the question back at me. Who do you think I'll say was my favorite athlete as a kid?
Oh, let's see. Oh man. Well, let's see. Who did the Minnesota North Stars have?
That's right. It could be.
Yeah, let's see. Well, let's see. Carl Lewis was pretty big
I
back
liked
then.
Carl Lewis. Yep.
Uh,
Track and field.
uh, boy, who was the? Gosh, that's a good one. Yeah. I mean, who was a good Minnesota Viking that was back during that late '70s, early '80s?
Fran Tarkenton.
Yeah, Fran Tarkenton. Yeah.
So Fran Tarkenton was my hero. I like Tommy Kramer too. Actually, I'm friends with him on Instagram. He's just a very approachable guy too. But Fran Tarkington was my childhood hero. As we got into the 80s, then you're right, like all the guys from the 80s Olympic hockey team, especially Neil Broughton, because he played for the University of Minnesota and he was a Minnesota guy. Loved Neil Broughton as a hockey player, but all of those guys on that team, uh, that was just just a moment that will never be recreated. I think the Miracle on Ice group.
Yeah.
Um, I liked, it's funny because it's like I liked all of those Olympic athletes from like the 1984 Olympics in LA and everything until later you find out that probably most of them were doping,
Yeah.
right? It's like it's a little bit you
Tarnished.
know, it's tarnished. It's like the 80s baseball players, right? It's like,
Uh,
oh,
yeah.
it's like at the time we kind of pretended like we didn't think that they were taking steroids. And then you come to find out, yeah, probably about 85% of them were, right? So it's kind of sad. Hey, here's the last question. Worst punishment you ever received?
Oh my. I was such a good kid. Just
Yeah.
an
Your
angel with
dad always says that, oh, Brady, he never did anything wrong.
just a little. No, I remember one time it was, when you're a kid and you're playing outside, right? Well, we had all the neighborhood kids over and we are playing baseball in our backyard.
Yeah.
And I had done something that warranted getting punished. So they said, okay, well, you're going to spend the whole day in your room. So, there you go. So I'm up there in my room and I can, of course, see out the window and see, you know,
Kids
Ted and
playing.
guys just hanging out and hitting the ball and running, having a
Oh yeah.
life. And I remember going back downstairs and saying, "You can spank me. Why don't you spank me?"
Yeah.
Because I'm outside. And they're like, "No, get back in your room." So that was it. But
So what's funny about that is like that was as an introvert, that punishment never worked. Like I don't think my parents ever figured it out, but it's like you can't go to the football game this weekend. It's like, great, I wasn't gonna go anyway. It's like you're not allowed to play with your friends. It's like, okay, that's fine. I'll just sit and watch TV all weekend. Like that wasn't a bad punishment. When I
yeah.
was older, taking away the car, that was a punishment,
Oh yeah.
right? Is having the car taken away, that hurt.
Yeah.
Because that was your freedom. That was you you felt like an adult when you were in that car driving around,
Yeah.
right? And so that one hurt. Um, the truth of the matter is I never really did anything too bad, you
Yeah.
know, nothing bad. I wasn't drinking or taking drugs or none of that. So it was usually it was being disrespectful, right? To my
Yeah.
parents somehow, like just a side comment.
Yeah.
Why
Mouth.
don't you shut up or whatever? Well, that doesn't go with far with parents, right? And
Yeah.
they tend not to like that. So,
Yeah.
uh,
One thing I don't get is, you touched on it. It's like when you're 16, you can't wait to get your driver's license. You can't wait. That's your
yeah,
free. It's like your bike was your
yeah,
freedom kid. And it seems like nowadays,
it's
they're
not the same.
16, 17, and they're not even getting their driver's license because they don't care. They don't want.
It's weird. I don't really get that. Like my son wasn't, like chomping at the bit to like get his driver's license. He got it and I think he loves driving, but it's like, yeah, it wasn't the same. Like I mean, the I was like at the DMV at like 8 o'clock
Yeah.
at my 16th birthday, right? And I got my driver's permit when I was 14. I think back then you could get a driver's permit when you were like 14.
Wow. Yeah.
And I think I got my driver's permit as soon as I could, and I was driving around with a parent in the car and all of that. It was just such a thrill, right? And it seems like, and I don't, it's weird. I don't understand that. It's like, it's the gateway to adulthood is like being able to drive a car, right?
Yeah, I don't get it.
All right. What three questions do you have for me, Brady?
So, just real quick, now I assume since you played baseball that you collected baseball cards.
Yes, I did.
Okay, so what was the one most valuable
This is easy.
that you had?
This is easy. I have a rookie Ricky Henderson card.
Ah, yes.
And here's the sad part. I don't know where it is. I've got
Ah,
it somewhere and I don't know where it is. It's
yeah,
terrible. It's in a book or something. You know, you move and it's in a box and then you move again and it's somewhere. The thing, I think, I mean, the last time I looked, it was worth 600
yeah,
and but it's been even higher than that. And now it's, you know, that was like 20 years ago when I looked at it. So it's like that's a that's a 45-year-old card.
right.
I
Yeah.
collected, so here's the benefit. I collected cards in 79, 80, and 81. That's when I got the majority of my baseball cards,
Mhm.
right? There's a lot of great cards from that era, right? You had guys, I got Nolan Ryans and I've got Rod Carews and I've got like all of that era, George Brett and Mattingly's and all of that. I've
Yeah.
got some of those 70s guys. I think you know, I've even got some earlier cards than that, but I've got 70s guys, Tony Oliva and Harmon Killebrew from the Twins and stuff like that. But um, uh, I kind of stopped collecting when I got in high school. I thought it was a little too dorky or something, right? And from what I've read, the value of the cards started to decrease a little bit after that because it became something where it was uh like it became a thing where you'd buy 10 boxes of the whole set,
Yeah.
right? And it became kind of a, you know, a thing.
Yeah.
Before that, it was, I mean, literally all my cards came from bubblegum packages, right?
Yep.
All of
Yep.
them were bubblegum packages. You'd go, it's 25 cents. You get, I don't know, what did you get? 10 cards, 20 cards in a bubblegum pack.
Yeah.
You'd open it up and you're like, no, not Champ Summers again. It's like I got six of those, right?
Yeah.
I had, you know, I've got some cards where I got like eight of the same guy, right? It's like, what is with this? You know, I got Ron LaFleur. That's a Detroit guy. I've got some of those. I got like Kent TeCulvey's and Willie Stargell, Dave Parker, um, uh, you know, Pete Rose, guys from the Reds, I think, kind of at the end of their career, a lot of those, Davey Concepcion and stuff like that. But I've got those. I bought my son quite a few, so he's kind of intermixed all of his cards, and he maybe has 1,000 or so of my cards plus his cards. And we've
Yeah.
got some good ones. And now they have apps where you just, you know, you like take a picture of it and it tells you what it's worth, right? Like, you
Yeah.
know, depending on how well it's taken care of. The guys that I didn't know and didn't care about, they ended up in my bike spokes, right?
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
so when I got the fifth Champ Summers card, he made the noise in my bike spokes.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that Ricky Henderson, whenever I find it, I'm gonna put that thing in glass and see, you know, what I should look it up again to see what it's worth, but that's a pretty valuable card, especially now that he's dead, right? It's like, which is sad.
Yeah.
Um, for people who didn't follow baseball when Ricky was a player, there's never going to be another player like Ricky Henderson.
Yeah.
No one's ever going to steal 150 bases in a season again. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And it was he would take a walk or get hit by a pitch, steal second, steal third, steal home, or score on a pop fly, right?
Yeah.
He could go 0 for 0 with 4 runs scored,
Yeah.
right? Like that was his standard thing. And he's got the most leadoff home runs in the history of baseball. And I think he has the most first pitch of the game home runs.
Hmm.
Because he's probably the best leadoff hitter of all time because of those stats. He could take a walk, he could steal 2 bases every time. I mean, just a pitcher's nightmare, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so Yeah,
Yeah.
great question.
Yeah. Well, the second one's kind of a general one because we kind of
Okay.
tend to glorify, the childhood. But is there one thing in that era that you would change or do differently that would, make that experience better?
Yeah, that's a good one. Um, Maybe not have feathered hair. No, I would. It would. What's funny is it's like it was the era of the perm too. Like girls in high school, everybody had a perm,
Yeah.
which was not good. But here's the thing: when I look at the photos of them, even though it's ridiculous, I still like it. And the
Really?
reason I still like it is because it it reminds me of those days, which were for the most part happy,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
different era. And so when I see girls with permed hair and those ridiculous jeans, the high-waisted jeans and stonewashed and all that stuff, it
Yeah.
looks dumb, but at the same time, it's like, that's the way it was. It was nice, right? Like I still like it. I don't know how
Yeah.
else to explain it, but um, yeah, I don't. That's about all I can think of for the moment.
Some of those styles come back, like
Sure,
the
they do.
bottoms and I think even the high-waisted jeans.
Yeah, they've gone through a couple of cycles and like the narrow pants where we were pegging our jeans and all that. That became skinny jeans.
Yeah.
It like became the style. I think like a polo shirt and a button-down Oxford and like chinos, that never really goes out of style. Those things are pretty classic, right? They're always a certain level of style to some of those things. The polo shirt has never gone out of style.
Yeah.
Um, so
Although
it's like,
I don't think the men's, the 1930s, 40s with the pants pulled like way up high.
yeah, way up with the skinny belt.
Yeah, that is bizarre when you see
That's
those.
weird. Yeah. Pleated pants, right? Maybe I'd do away with pleated pants.
Yeah.
That was
Did,
that's more of a 90s thing than an 80s thing, but it's like pleated pants, yeah, not so much, right?
did you have corduroys?
Oh yes, gosh, I loved
Yeah.
Levi's corduroys. Like I had like six colors. It was like in fact, I chatted once with a friend from sixth grade on Facebook, and what I remembered about her is she had rust-colored corduroys.
Really?
I just, for whatever reason, I remember that about her,
Wow.
right? But I had many colors of corduroys, and I also had a corduroy vest, a Levi's corduroy vest.
Oh man, it is comfortable.
So
It's really
they're
comfortable.
comfortable. I don't know what happened to corduroys. They went away and have not come back for the most part, right? But they were comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, that's well, and finally, as far as when you were a kid, so when you were a young child, did you have a favorite actor that you enjoyed watching
When I was a kid, like Henry Winkler as the Fonz probably was one of my favorites.
up there?
Uh,
Yeah,
um, I kind of idolized the character, right?
yeah,
And thought it was tremendously funny. I liked Starsky and Hutch, both of those guys, quite a bit when I was a kid. I love that show.
yeah,
That was a good show, man. It kind of holds up too today. It's just the, good buddy cop show. Um, I watched Charlie's Angels, so for a female actress like Cheryl Ladd, she was the peak of my interest when I was a kid.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Lou Ferrigno from the Hulk, and
yeah, Lou Ferrigno, that's right. The Hulk, that was a great show as well, man. I loved the Hulk. Loved, of course, Harrison Ford. What with Star Wars and Indiana Jones,
yeah,
probably as far as a movie star, probably Harrison Ford was my favorite
yeah,
actor.
yeah,
What
yeah,
about you? Well, who was your favorite?
yeah. That's pretty odd. I liked the Great American Hero. I don't know if you ever
Oh
watched.
yeah, that was a great show, man, with the theme song. It's like I can still believe it or not.
Yeah. And it was so. I went back and actually watched some of like the very early episodes. I think it was
Right?
79 or 80. And the technology and everything, it's
No, it's terrible.
so bad. And even just the themes, and it's just so cheesy and hokey, but just watching it gives you that comfort of,
Yeah, it makes you smile.
yeah, that simpler
It's like
time.
a lot of stuff from the 70s and 80s was pretty cheesy, and that cheese makes you feel good
Yeah,
because here's what I think it is about it because it's innocent somehow,
yeah,
right? Um, and you knew it was cheesy even at the time, but it was like that was the best they could do, and it was fun and it was entertaining and it made you feel good,
yeah,
right? It just did. And I don't mind that. Same as you said, it's like when I go back and I watch that stuff and I think, oh, this is kind of cheesy, and it's like, but it feels good,
yeah.
right? It just does. It's like I like it.
Yeah, it takes you back, and there's some familiar ness to it that really is enjoyable. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, like you said, Harrison Ford was up there. Sylvester Stallone, Rambo, that was big as a boy.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd say those two were up there.
I think our heroes in the day had some testosterone,
Yeah,
right? And there's not a lot of that going around anymore, it seems like. And I mean, the Fonz, Indiana Jones, Starsky and Hutch. Do you sense a theme here, right? It's like that's definitely a thing. Even Mark Zuckerberg said that he thought there needed to be more like testosterone in the workplace or something to that effect this last week, right? Now I don't believe him in what he says, but that's interesting,
yeah,
right? Maybe things are coming back around where that's allowed again. I hope so.
yeah,
Hey, so Get Off My Lawn is our segment on pet peeves. Sometimes they're things that have changed over the years. We've talked about some of those. I got one I got to share though, Brady. It just happened to me this week. And this has nothing to do with Gen X stuff necessarily. But when we were kids, parents had this thing where they always were asking you if you turned off the lights, right? Like this was a big thing. It was like they were obsessed with like and here's the thing. I have looked it up. Do you know how much it costs to leave a light on for like an hour? Like 0.0001 cent
that,
to leave a light bulb. Like you could leave a light bulb on for an entire month and it would cost like 20 cents, right? It's like I don't know where that came from. I think that's the Great Depression era thing, maybe,
yeah,
from our parents or something. I don't know. Um, but here's my pet peeve with lights. So when you come home, the first thing you do after you've been out and you leave in the day and then you come home and there's no lights on in your house, the first thing you do when you come home, the first person in the door, you turn on lights. Turn on the hallway light, turn on living room light, kitchen light, bedroom light, so that the people after you can see where they're going, right? So my family somehow doesn't understand that. So we're coming home from a soccer game. The family comes in first. I'm, getting the camera and stuff out of the car. I walk in. It's still completely dark, right? They've gone about their business and no lights are on anywhere. The hall light's not on. I'm tripping over stuff. It's like, can you please just turn a light on when you come into a house? How is that so hard? So I'm like, that's a pet peeve I want to talk about. The
that's,
one that relates to Gen X stuff is uh, NIL in college sports.
hmm,
Um, it's just so out of control.
hmm, yeah,
And we talked about it in previous podcasts. It's just starting to really irritate me now, right? Uh, College players switching teams every year if they don't like it or they think the team's no good or whatever. I'm going to go where I get paid the most money. It's not even That's not even college sports anymore. right?
Right.
This is like
Yeah.
semi-professional sports. It's taking the fun and the innocence and a lot of the joy and loyalty out of it, and I hate it,
Right.
right? It's just I don't like it. Can we go back to you recruited a guy, he's locked in for 4 years, and there's almost no way out of it. It was just, I want to know that this is my team, and hey, we got this great guy, and he's going to be there for 4 years. I
Yeah.
hate this that he's going to transfer to Georgia, or, I saw Georgia quarterback is transferring, and it's like, come on already. It's just so frustrating.
They've taken a team sport and turned it into it's
It's
all,
all about money and me and me and me. And,
it's,
I saw Deion Sanders said today, oh, there's teams he's not going to let draft his son, Shador.
oh,
And
brother.
then, people on X were like, how do you do that exactly? How do
Yeah.
you, well, what you do is you say, well, I won't sign with you, right? You pull the Eli Manning thing. I'm not going to San Diego. Or not Eli Manning. Peyton Manning, I'm not going to San Diego. I'll go play at Denver. And so San Diego had to draft him and trade him, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like Jerry Maguire, right? Like he didn't want to go one place and go the other. It's like, but I just like it's all about the money and it's all about me, 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 right? Like, oh, you're not good enough to draft my son. Oh, well, excuse me. Maybe I didn't want to draft him anyway, right?
Going to turn down because they want more than $100 million. They want $100 million and they want to live in this city and have a great team to walk into. It's like, hey, just get off the
Get over
lawn.
yourself. Get over yourself, right? It's like, come on, man.
Yeah.
It's like, because here's the thing. If you don't want to be the top draft pick because you're going to Cleveland or the Jets or
Oh
the
yeah.
Giants or Tennessee, right? It's like, yeah, well, you probably don't want to go play for crappy teams, right? That's how it works.
Yeah, look at Caleb Williams with Bears. That there was a lot of noise going on that he's not going to play for this team or that team or go to New York or do this. Uh, I don't think it really got him any better situation. But yeah, it's ridiculous. It really
Yeah,
is.
it is. So I don't know what the solution is, right? I really don't. There's no going back now, I'm afraid.
Yeah,
And those big schools, Ohio State and the Alabamas of the world, they're just going to be playing. Everybody on the team is going to be making $10 million. It's like this
yeah,
is ridiculous, right? It
yes.
just doesn't feel the same. The other pet peeve that I want to throw out here is, and I'm gonna start posting these on X. I mentioned it to you earlier in the week. Like I hate safety seals. And I just watched a documentary on the Tylenol thing that launched this whole thing. It was back in the 80s. Some nut job who they've never caught, by the way, that is an unsolved crime.
Hmm.
He put cyanide in Tylenol capsules and killed like half a dozen people in Chicago.
Hmm.
And so everything has like 14 safety seals on it now. And my challenge is for every CEO out there, can you open your own product? Because there's a lot of products out there that people like me, I can't get it open. Like, and you shouldn't have to use a scissors or an X-Acto knife or something to get your product open, right? I should be able to tear it up. So I'm making videos now. Whenever I get a product, I'm going to take a video of me trying to open it. And then I'm going to give you a grade about your product and how easy it is to open. And I'm thinking about it. If I can't get it open, I still have some dexterity. Yeah, what if you're 80 years old and living in a nursing home
Yeah,
and you get this pill bottle, you can't get it open.
no
It's
time.
got that it's got that that seal on the top of the bottle and a lot of them don't have a little tab. How do
Yeah,
you how do you pull it? You can't even get it open. I'm taking, pliers and jamming it in there and ripping it apart, and then there's cotton inside, and then the bottle you have to push down and turn, or you have to turn around 3 times before you open. That's a pet peeve of mine. Now
yeah.
I know it's like it's a good thing because now you trust that the product hasn't been tampered with because somebody once did something 40 years ago,
Mm.
right? But this is how things start, right? It starts with that, and then you can't ever go back,
Right.
right? So now
Yep.
your bottle of syrup has 3 safety wraps on it,
Yep.
you
Yep.
know.
Still having to take the shoes off at the airport and
Oh, stuff like that too. It's like that's just because one guy, one time
it ruins it for everybody.
ruins it for everybody. Did you have a pet peeve, Brady?
Yeah, just quickly, one thing I definitely would say it's a pet peeve. It doesn't tie in with Gen X, but I don't know if you're watching the Notre Dame Ohio State football game, but
Yes.
caught this player wearing a black nose strip
Ah, yes.
with a Bible verse on it. I think it was like Romans 11:22 or so. He's got it on there. He gets tackled. He stands up and punches the guy in the face. And I'm thinking,
Oh man.
go and take that off. I'm sorry, you don't get to wear the Bible verse today.
No. It's like there's a great I remember David Letterman, and this was in probably like 1986 or whatever. He was telling the stories. It's just like that. It's like I pulled up behind a car on my way into work. He's talking to Paul Schaefer, right? His musical guy. He's like, and the guy has a bumper sticker and it says honk if you love Jesus, right? And he's like, sure. So, beep, beep. Guy rolls down his window, turns around, and yells at me, the light's still red, moron. Right? It's like, yeah, if you're gonna put a bumper sticker on your car like that, maybe
Yeah,
don't do stuff like
yeah.
that,
I
right?
think you act, especially if you're wearing a Bible verse. But yeah, that was one thing that I thought was comical. The other thing was you were talking about the fires in California, and I talked to someone today who grew up in the 60s and 70s in Southern California, and she was telling me that it was wonderful. Like it was clean.
Yeah. Oh no, it's beautiful back then.
It was. She kept saying it was a privilege to
Yeah.
grow and enjoy the beaches in California, and she told me that now, and she rattled off, between the homelessness and the violence, drugs, and
Smog.
it's smog. You don't want to have your kids anywhere close to there. There's no
No.
beaches you go to that doesn't have the garbage trash or violence. She's saying it's just ruined. It's completely ruined. But she mentioned how you could have your doors open at night there,
Isn't that something?
and that was one thing that back growing up. Yeah, you could. I mean, it was still in that time frame where you could have your doors open, and how that's just been completely ruined. But the peeve of it is how year after year there's no recourse, there's no correction, there's no
Yeah.
responsibility taken
Nope.
for ruining that. The most beautiful state in the country is just held under the thumb of these politicians that are making it so we can't go and enjoy the
Yeah.
beach because it's either too sketchy, dangerous, dirty, whatever. It's just too bad.
We used to go to San Diego like once a year, and now we never go,
Yeah,
right? I just don't want to go. For one thing, gas is like $7 a gallon, right? It's like everything's super expensive.
yeah,
You get accosted by homeless people. You fear for your life. And then they have all the gun restrictions, right? Guess what? The criminals still have them,
yeah, right.
right? But the law-abiding citizens, nope, can't bring it in. All this, you're afraid that you'll be made the bad guy because you're an upstanding normal citizen. Well,
Right.
we kowtow to illegal aliens and criminals. It's
Yeah,
a sad, sad thing. Hey, I got a X post of the week here. Um, this is a funny one, and maybe you can even relate to it more than I can, but it essentially says that uh, in 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger happened, and kids were forced to watch it on TV in school,
Yeah.
and it explodes, and seven people die, and it's like, okay, go to your next class. Like nothing happened. You just witnessed people dying in elementary school.
Yeah.
And all right, now it's, biology class or, lunch break, whatever.
Yeah. I
Like,
I think teachers were scared they were going to lose their jobs or something by having us watch this because I remember how fast they
oh
just,
my gosh.
oh, children, okay, let's go. Let's this way.
Yeah. It's like, and that's so think about that. That is 39 years ago this month.
Wow.
Right? 39 years ago. It's like that's crazy. But yeah, it was a different time, right? We were a tougher group of people. Now they would have emotional security dogs, at your school for everyone, and you get to go cuddle with them or something if something bad like that happened, right?
Counselors.
Um,
Counselors.
yeah,
Yeah.
counselors on site, all of that. It's like, nope, you just watch seven. Hey, how was school today, honey? I watched seven people die live on TV. Great. That was wonderful.
That's right.
This is how things went, back then.
Oh man.
Um, so, hey, producers tapping me on the shoulder, telling me we got to wrap stuff up for this edition of our show. And so we've got some major things happening between now and the next show. We got the national championship on Monday night. This is going to be interesting, right? It seems like from everything we've seen, this could be a good game. There haven't been very many. Only that ASU game really was a really good game.
Yeah.
There haven't been a lot of good games. And then we've got the second round of the playoffs, and we're going to see, right? It's like, hey, can some of those wild cards hang? What quarterbacks are going to take their teams on? Is Detroit, going to be rusty for the first quarter or half? I don't know. We'll see. Jaden Daniels, we'll see what he can do, right? It's going to be an interesting week, and we have the inauguration on Monday, as if there's not enough going on
Right.
that day, and it's Martin Luther King Day. Just by
Yeah.
the way, in case nobody realized, everybody's got the day off. A lot of, or most people have the day off. So look forward to our next show. Be sure to join us next week. Remember to hit subscribe and like. We're on, you name it, we're on it. By the way, TikTok's going to get banned, so we didn't even bother going on there. So that's, but we're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on X, and I'm going to post some of those unwrapping videos. That'll be like worth watching. Amazon Music and iHeartRadio. If you just want to listen to us in the car, that's an easy way. And this week, I'm announcing we're also on UHF Channel 75 in Hazlet, Michigan. So, all those people in Hazlet, check us out on UHF Channel 75. So, for Brady and myself, we want you to have fun. We're from the 80s. It was about having fun. We want you to have fun, but just be home before the street lights come on. All right.
All right. Yeah.
Hey, we'll catch you next time, Brady. Thank you for joining us, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Have a good night.